One of the basic skills you have to have with Visio is just an ability to get around the drawing window. This is where you'll be focusing, probably 80 to 95% of your attention after all. And you'll quickly get very frustrated if you don't learn the tips and techniques to zoom in to the thing that you're dealing with, the shape you're dealing with, the text you're putting on that shape. So that's what this lesson is all about. So let's start things out here. We've got a drawing, and I'm going to put a circle in that drawing. I'll just put it anywhere here, not really important where. And I'll make it a little bit smaller, and I'll move it around. Now we'll discuss all of these things as we start to actually build the diagram. But for now, I just want to quickly put another shape onto the drawing so that I can show you these navigation techniques. Now, let's say I want to add some text. Well, I have to select this, give it a click, and then start typing in my text. But it's going to be very small. I'm not going to be able to see what I'm typing or if I'm making any typos unless I zoom in. So, how do I do that? Well, you can use the zoom slider, of course, and you can pan and zoom this way, left and right, up and down. You can reset things to zoom to fit page to current window. I've talked about these buttons before, but there are even better ways to do it. For example, you can hold down Control and Shift on your keyboard, and now the mouse becomes this little magnifying glass, and I can zoom in, and wherever I hold the magnifying glass, the zoom should go towards that magnifying glass. If you have a scroll wheel, you can also scroll up and down in your diagram just by using the scroll wheel. You don't have to use the scroll bars here. So now that I'm zoomed in, I can give this a click and then add some text. I'll just type in text and hit escape. Now I can see what I'm doing thanks to being able to scroll and zoom and pan. Now, probably at least 100 times during the course of designing a Visio diagram, you'll want to take a look at the whole thing. So once again, I can do so by clicking on that button, but there's another keyboard shortcut that I can use. And in fact, I'll just type it in right here. It's Control, let me double click actually, Control, Shift, and W. Let's try Control, Shift, and W here if you're following along. Control, Shift, W. This also zooms to fit. So just saving you a couple of seconds there using Control, Shift, and W rather than going here will save you hours of time per Visio diagram. Again, it may not seem like a big deal just saving a couple of seconds, but because you'll have to do this 100 times, 300 times as you're making your diagram, it will really be a time saver. And then the other technique you can use, if you have a scroll wheel, is you can hold down the control button on your keyboard or the control key, and now you can zoom in and out by using the wheel. So if I let go of Control key and use the wheel, I go up and down. If I hold down Control, I zoom in and I zoom out. So these are very handy techniques, especially if you have a scroll wheel. I hope that you do if you're using Visio, but if not, it's no big deal. These are very handy techniques you can use to quickly pinpoint what you want to work in. Now, before I wrap things up here in this lesson, I'll show you one other thing that you'll encounter in the drawing window, and it's the page navigation. So right now I'm just dealing with a single page drawing, but some of your drawings will expand to multiple pages. So you can add an additional page by clicking on the plus right there. You can see from the screen tip it will insert a page, and now I have 2 pages. And I can scroll up and down on the second page. If I want to see the first page, I have to navigate to that first page by clicking on that right there. So there's page 1, there's page 2. I can also use this to switch back and forth between the pages in my drawing. And I'll do Control Shift W one more time to zoom to fit.